this is a timed test. And if we don't meet that time, then, we had an interfaith service on Monday morning, I think, in D.C. at the Martin Luther King Memorial. And, it was just the most beautiful and powerful place to be at sunrise and all of that. And, of course, I was thinking of Dr. King's very favorite quote from that Massachusetts abolitionist Theodore Parker, that he would always use: the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Okay, it's going to take us a while, but we will get there. They were quite confident of that. We're not. The arc of the physical universe is short, and it bends toward heat, and it's bending fast. So we need to make it work fast. And the question is what else that healing looks like beyond the things we're doing. I know that y'all are doing close to home. What it looks like on a larger scale is working not just by addition, not one household in one town at a time, one congregation at a time. That's important, but we also have to figure out how to work by multiplication. And that means politics. That means changing the basic and fundamental rules under which we work so that we quickly staunch this flow of carbon into the atmosphere, so that we quickly make this transition at full scale to what comes next. And the reason that that's hard in the first place is because it's hard. The fossil fuel is at the center of our economies, and under the best of circumstances, it would be very difficult to make a quick transition away from it. But the other reason it's hard is because we're not under the best of circumstances. We have an important and influential part of our society, our economy, fighting to make sure that nothing ever changes. And that's the fossil fuel industry, which is the most profitable enterprise in which humans have ever engaged. And hence, as you well know from our political system and most other political systems, that money is enough to provide them with real power. And in this case, all the power they need is the power to stall and delay and prevent action. And that's actually the easiest kind of power to exercise. The hard part is the power to actually change things. We're not, my guess, going to ever match the fossil fuel industry dollar for dollar. Now, I know Cambridge is an affluent place, but I'm thinking that even if we pooled all our money, we would still come up a little short. Exxon last NASA, our greatest climatologist, his team published a paper in 2008 saying, we know how much carbon in the atmosphere is too much now. Any value greater than 350 parts per million is not compatible with the planet on which civilization developed and to which life on Earth is adapted. Okay? That's strong language. It's stronger language by far if you know that outside right now in Cambridge and in Cartagena and in every other place in the world, it's 393 parts per million CO2 and rising 2 parts per million per year. We're way too hot. That's why Pakistan drowns and Texas burns, So that was bad news to read, but it did give those 8 of us, myself and those 7 students, one clue about how we might go about the work of trying to build a global organization out of nothing. The biggest problem we thought we faced, we were sort of ludicrously unaware, but the biggest problem we thought we faced was that not that we didn't have any money or any organization, it's that, how do you organize on a planet where everybody speaks a different language? How do you make that work? And the answer we came up with was to take that scientific data point, 350, on the theory that Arabic numerals cross linguistic boundaries. So it would mean the same thing everywhere. And we set out to work, and that work has been ongoing. The first, we fanned out all over the place. There were 7 students, and there are 7 continents. So it was a good match. Each one took one. The guy who took the Antarctic also had to take the internet. It just seemed fair. But we spread out everywhere and found people like ourselves, mostly young people to begin with, all over the world. Not all sort of environmentalists, because there's not sort of a category that there is everywhere, but everywhere there's someone who's worried about war and peace and about hunger and about public health and about development and about all the things you can't have on a destabilizing planet. So those were our allies. And we said to everybody, look, we're going to do this first big day. It was, a year later in the fall of 2009, and we want you to come together. And there were so many people in this room who helped, but we got the first sense that it was going to work 2 days early. And I'm telling you this story because I've just told you one sad story from Ethiopia, and I want to tell you a happy one. We got the first sense it was going to work 2 days before when the phone rang in our little makeshift office, and it was a bad satellite connection from Addis Ababa. And on the other end was our lead organizer, a volunteer like all of us in Ethiopia, a 17-year-old girl named Lily, and she was in tears on the phone, and she said the government took away our permit for Saturday. It's not the nicest government on earth, so we're doing it today before they can stop us, which was brave, We're really sorry. We don't want to be, we wanted to do it with everybody else so much. We don't want to spoil it for people. We don't want to jump the gun. And we have 15,000 kids right now out in the street in Addis chanting 350, And so I was like, don't worry about the date, it's okay. And it was, for the next 2 days, these pictures flowed in from there were 5,100 demonstrations in 181 countries. CNN called it the most widespread day of political activity in the planet's history. And it was beautiful. And it's continued to grow and grow and grow in all kinds of ways. We haven't even won yet, We got to Copenhagen in that big climate conference, and we convinced 117 nations to sign on to this 350 target, but the truth is they were the wrong 117 nations. They were each of the poor ones, the addicts led by us weren't quite yet ready to come to terms with what was going on, and so we've legislatively still not gotten anywhere near where we need to go, not at all. But this movement continues to build, and that's important because the first step is a kind of awareness that has to spread, and the next opportunity that I know a lot of you are engaged in comes on May 5th, just 8 or 9 days away, okay? And we're doing this day all around the world that we're calling Connect the Dots, and the point is to go to all these places that are suffering already from climate change or that know what they'll be suffering in the time to come, and at those places have people kind of rally around, literally with dots, big cardboard dots or whatever else, and say, remember us, remember this thing that happened here. Don't pity us. Don't think of it as a one-off tragedy that you should send us some money for or something. Understand that it is part of a pattern and that it will be solved, if it's ever solved, the day you start to connect those dots and that pattern emerges. My great colleague, Jamie Henn, just 15 minutes ago sent me an update of sort of some of the really beautiful sort of lead actions that people are planning around the world, and I'll just give you a few examples. On the outskirts of Bujumbura in Burundi, which is for some reason always been a hotbed of 350 activity. Students will gather with victims of recent flooding in the village of Gatumba that destroyed 500 homes last month. In northeastern Kenya, people will gather in Garissa to highlight the ongoing drought in eastern Africa and how it's threatened the survival of communities. In Dakar, in Senegal, students will hold dots on the beach to highlight the sea level rise and storm surges now threatening the city. In the Seychelles, people are organizing a moonlit mutia, a traditional dance often used for social protest to lament the impact of rising seas on their islands. In the Pacific, in Australia, activists will roll a giant dot around downtown Melbourne, stop at offices and buildings connected to companies and banks and institutions driving extreme energy like tar sands. In Sydney, they'll unfurl a giant banner on the banks of the Parramatta River, which is increasingly eroded from extreme weather events. On the shorefront in Auckland, activists will build a human wall of dots representing the height of the seawall that will be necessary to prevent the inundation of the oceans. In the Marshall Islands, which is where the sun rises first on this planet, so the first action, students will dive underwater to their dying coral reefs to take a photo with the banner that reads, "Connect the dots, your carbon emissions are killing our coral." On and on and on. I mean, in Pakistan, in Delhi, in Srinagar, in Kathmandu, in Ho Chi Minh City, in the Philippines, in Iran, in Israel, in Kyrgyzstan, in Lebanon, in Tripoli, on and all around this country. Every place I've gone the last few weeks, I've been just hearing there's thousands of these things, so I can't really keep track of them. People keep telling me the great things that they're doing. Some of these places, people are going to be angry a little bit. It's been 2 years in a row now that people have been flooded out of their homes in Pakistan, okay? You can't just keep doing that year after year. It's impossible, And so I think there'll be an edge some of the time. We just heard from people who are going to use the day in British Columbia to block the train tracks where the coal export trains come to the shores of the Pacific to take coal out to the rest of the world, Other places, it'll be, at least a little more good-humored. I was in San Francisco the other day, and big warehouse we were using to paint a bunch of banners, including a giant one, like a football field-sized banner that's going on one of these thawing glaciers up in the Sierra. And the question is, what should we put on the banner? And everybody had a lot of earnest slogans about stopping climate change. And I said, no. In this case, we just need to quote from that, great historical figure, the Wicked Witch of the West. It just should say, "I'm melting." And so that's what it's going to say in sort of 3-story high letters, there on the glacier. And hopefully, people will get the message. Maybe we'll get some coverage that day in the press, but certainly we'll have this bank now of images we can use for the next few years to show people the human face of what is going on, to take this science and make it not an abstraction but a reality, to make people understand just how much trouble we're already in, and hence how much work we have already to do. And the questions of how to do that work, what exactly to do politically, are hard, of course, and we don't have all the answers, and right now we don't even have the possibility of enacting those answers. But of course, the basic challenge is to stand up to the power of the fossil fuel industry. The basic underlying trouble here, of course, is that they have a special break, a special benefit, a special concession that goes to no other industry on earth. They're allowed to put out their waste for free, okay? Nobody else does that. If you have a restaurant in Harvard Square, you'd be more profitable if you were allowed each night just to take your garbage at the end of the day and shovel it out in the middle of Mass Ave. You'd do better. The problem is, 2 weeks later, there'd be rats in Harvard Square, and we'd be dealing with leptospirosis, and that's why 100 years ago, everybody said, no, we're not going to do this anymore. You got to take care of your trash. No more just tossing things out in the street. It's one of the, ways we tell what a civilized place is. The only exception to this is the richest and most powerful industry on earth, which is allowed to pour the most dangerous waste on the planet, carbon dioxide, into the atmosphere for free. And my prediction is nothing will change on the scale that we need it to change until that changes, until that carbon carries a price that reflects the damage it does in the atmosphere. And my prediction is it will not happen until we blunt the power of the fossil fuel industry some, and that is going to be a very hard task. And it's going to take not just rallies and beautiful pictures and appeals to moral conscience. It's also going to take some really determined effort. And I will finish just by telling you for a minute about this work that we've done in the last year, because it's not that it's going to solve the problem, but that it indicates some of the paths we might need to travel. We